Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of South Asian Success. I'm really thrilled to have here somebody who I have gotten to know and who is actually kind of makes me feel similar and seen in my own life of being someone that's just multifaceted, that's doing a lot of amazing things, raising people up, bringing up communities. Welcome, Ash, to the podcast. Would love to hear a little bit about you. Tell everyone who you are. Tell everyone about the overachievers. Tell everyone about your journey. Let's hear a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I love these serendipitous moments of when you connect with one person and it leads you to basically where we're at today, right? I feel like that's probably, in some sense, the through line to my life and career because I am such a people person. I've always been curious and I love connecting with others, which is very much a huge part of my career journey. So, to zoom out, I've spent about 15 years as a go-to-market strategist working with an array of companies, but primarily focusing on high growth tech companies. For quite a while, that was basically my identity, which we were talking about a little bit before. And so, I rose through the ranks at high growth tech companies, helped create multi-billion dollar valuations. And then around my 30s, I hit a wall and I started questioning a lot of the things around, why I had gone down this path with my career and really just questioning my ambition and how much of it was my own and what I now wanted to do with this based on having achieved a lot of the goals that I originally set out to do, right? And that led me to founding the OverachiveHers, which I am the CEO and founder of today. And, I'll tell you probably a few different things about that, but it was very much inspired by my own career journey and rising through the ranks as a woman of color in tech. And unexpectedly, it hit 10 million reach in the first 6 months.
Amazing.
And yeah, thank you. We have, everyone from like Sharon Stone and Whoopi Goldberg who are followers to women like us who have, kind of been at that director, VP level at some really amazing companies. And so I'm grateful to have my own experience to speak to and then be able to support other women in different stages and helping them be seen too. So very much aligned with what we're doing today.
I love that. That's such a wonderful story of growth. And I think developing things like a community often happens as a part of your overall trajectory, your career. And you and I, when we first met, we also talked about like the earlier days, right?
Yes.
Growing up as a South Asian person or child in
Yeah.
communities that were not very not very diverse at the time. Tell us a little bit about how your upbringing, your moving around to different places, how did
Yeah.
that shape who you are, and your sort of overall persona that you bring to this community?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee before it was as cool as it is today. So it was probably me and like one other brown child at the time, right? So I moved there when I was around fourth grade. And it's funny because even before Nashville, my family was in an even smaller town called Parsons, which has a population of like 2,500 people. But I mention that because like it does shape so much of who I have now become and how I move through the world because I have such an array of experiences. Both of my parents are Indian, Punjabi, and I had to really navigate a lot of my own like learning journey with my culture over time, right? So when you're a kid in Tennessee, like you're just trying to fit in. And so I have come to value my culture and my relationship to my culture has evolved very much over time. I don't think I really started to unpack that until I was in New York in my mid to late 20s, when I was making a choice for like where I wanted to go to pursue my college education. I was very much like, get me out of the South as soon as possible because my mom's side was still in India, my dad's side was in Canada. So I felt like I was very international and I wasn't really getting that in Nashville at the time. In hindsight, I have so much gratitude and I really appreciate the kind of suburban life and what my parents worked really hard to provide for me and my brother. Like, I have so much more of an appreciation for that now and time and place. But I was exposed to diversity in a whole different way outside of like just being exposed to Indians who are my family members. Once I went to Los Angeles for school and then now in New York, you're in the hub of it, right? Um, the one thing I'll say that we were talking about before is even when I was at college, I was very much trying to figure out like where I fit into all of this, right? I joined a traditional sorority. I had an older cousin who was like straight from India, and she had like her different array of Indian friends. And I always kind of felt like they didn't entirely accept me. But then I also kind of like didn't fit into, you know, the broader culture as it is. Like I still had an identity as a South Asian woman, but I didn't really know what to make of that. I just kind of felt like I was dancing in both worlds.
I mean, so many things to relate to there, but there's one thing that you said that I think I've never heard anybody say, and I feel like I need to adopt this. So I might be borrowing from you. I love how you said, you felt very international and that your
Yeah.
home, although it's your home, and we all, I mean, I grew up in small town Ohio. I think many of us that grew up in those small town experiences who were seeking something else
Yeah.
didn't know how to put words to what that was. But the way that you describe that is really poetic. It's really like a wonderful way to describe it. So thank you for like changing how I might talk about my upbringing a little bit. It shapes us. Those
Yeah.
experiences are wonderful, but they're also maybe places that we weren't meant to be forever, right? So that's kind of
Yeah.
an interesting thing.
Well, I wonder what was it like for you, like in Ohio? Like, at what point did you kind of maybe recognize that shift with your relationship and identity? Because in New York now, I have a lot of, South Asian friends, and it's been interesting to have these conversations with them because it feels like there's usually a moment where you start to go a little bit deeper in a different way as an adult than just like accepting how you grew up, right? In America as a South
Yeah.
Asian.
No, absolutely. I mean, I look back, lived in a smaller town in Ohio. We had like 5 brown kids in my school. So that was pretty good, I would say, because we were like
Yeah.
engineering town. So people came there and we had a lot of doctors. But I remember going to Cleveland and meeting like bigger populations of
Yeah.
people in high school. That was like the first time I ever did that. And it like changed my world, right?
Yeah.
Obviously we all had our Indian community. We went to had the volley, did those kinds of things. And that was wonderful. We had our little smaller pockets. But I remember that shift in my mind, which was like, I want this, right? I craved
Yeah. Yeah.
that different connection. And I didn't know that about myself until I was, I think 14 or 15 when I started to meet all those bigger communities. I knew for me that what I wanted was not going to be in the small town just because of the sheer volume and the diversity, right? I wanted somewhere bigger. So even Cleveland was better, or I went to, school in Columbus and then I kept moving around like you, right? I moved to New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that there was that moment for me too, which was when I started to see what different looked like.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, it's wonderful to look back. Like I mentioned to you, I'm releasing a poetry collection, and I put today when I was talking about it to somebody, I said it's for people that want to have they love the nostalgia. Like I'm all about
Yeah.
nostalgia in every
Yeah.
era of my life, but I want to grow and build better, right? So
Yeah.
there's like the two sides of the coin. And maybe that's where it's a great parlay into I want to hear about overachievers because
Yeah.
we are here to talk about this today. Let's
Yeah.
talk to everyone about what is it? Tell us a little bit about more about this community and what was it like to build this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to kind of again zoom out and like, what is the Overachievers about? I think the best way to describe it is I've kind of viewed high achieving women, having identified as one myself. There's like a real archetype to this, right? Like, I've always geeked out on psychology. I've been very like curious about myself and all like, why do I do the things that I do? And even like consumer psychology in general is fascinating to me. But what I've realized is, especially in the culture we've kind of grown up in now as women in North America, what tends to happen is in your early 20s, I say you're like an ambitious achiever, right? Like you're just like, I want to make my mark on the world. Like for me, I wanted to get as much experience as I possibly could. And what starts to happen is as you start to reach some of those goals, there's a shift that happens where we start to question what our identities are beyond titles, right? What are the things I care about? Am I really successful if I'm earning like a high 6 figures, but I'm not taking care of my health? If I don't know anything about where to invest my money to grow wealth, what does my relationship look like to self and in like partnership romantically? And so there are a lot of patterns that specifically apply to high achieving women. And there's a lot of these that specifically will apply to what I say, like underrepresented communities, right? Maybe you're the daughter of immigrants. Maybe you come from a different socioeconomic background. And so there's this underlying desire to prove yourself. And so what I was really looking for at the time, which is what the Overachievers now does, is help those women who are in transition move from ambitious achiever to aligned achiever more seamlessly through community, events, and content, so educational materials. And so what was happening for me was I got let go from a company that basically had been my whole identity. I was like, how could this like I felt like I didn't see it coming. And I started to really look at the breadth of my career and the different highs and lows and what happened. And I just realized there were certain harsh realities that I didn't feel like anybody was talking about enough openly, right? We talk about the statistics around women, but it's been a little delicate to go into the nuance around how these statistics apply to different women of color, right? We talk about, oh, women need to band together. And yet most women you talk to will agree that other women have been the ones to tear them down the most, right? And so I'm like, I want to have hard conversations. I want to talk about the ugly realities that exist out there. And so I just started like looking up what the data was. And I went on my own learning journey to process my grief, frustration, anger based on like, how could I be in this position that I didn't see coming? And as I did that, I was just putting out clips of content, something that Sally Krawcheck said about women and people of color having to work harder just to get promoted, and things that I felt like, again, were based on my experience. And I was just posting consistently, like I said, kind of for me. And within, I think the ninth post even went viral. First, we hit like 500,000 views, then 1 million. And I was like, there is something here that people are wanting to talk about. But because I'm an overachiever, I didn't just want to be somebody who was putting educational content out there. I'm like, I know firsthand what this category of person is capable of doing when they set their mind to something. And so I thought, well, what if we, put 1% of our attention and skill set towards solving these problems rather than just like, I was like, I don't want to just put data out there and complain. I want to move the needle. And I know based on, all of the goals I've set out for myself that I've achieved, why not me? Like, I'm capable of doing this. And if I haven't been able to find the type of women's community that I want to be a part of, well, I might as well create that. So it's kind of
Yeah,
how we got here.
no small feat though. I mean, having founded a community, a virtual community, it's hard. I totally can say that it is hard. So, but I love that you had like it found you in a way, right?
Yeah.
The realization that it was important found you. Okay, just for like everybody that's listening that's going, I would like to be maybe a part of this or learn more, or is this for me? Who is the target, kind of community member, or who are the types of women that you see? And tell us a little bit about what are some of the benefits coming out of it for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll kind of also highlight that there's two categories of women that tend to really engage with the overachievers. I would say the primary focus tends to be women that are in their like 30s to 50s, and they've like probably had, at least 10 years of work experience, and they are in transition, right? Maybe they're building like a portfolio career where they're like, I've accomplished a lot, but I'm not entirely sure what's next. And I want to do that in community with other smart women. I think there's totally a time and place for business coaches and all of these different tools that exist, but you would be surprised at what like peer learning can do when there's, so many incredible women across major urban cities, but even there's ambitious women outside of urban cities. I'd say 30s to 50s has kind of been the sweet spot. And it's usually someone that I will say is either intrapreneurial or entrepreneurial. I also believe that like we do really well with like the corporate to founder pipeline. I think, you have amazing groups like Entreprenista that are really supporting like the growth of a founder, kind of like once they're at a certain point. But for women who are like, okay, I'm in corporate, I feel like I want to start taking ownership of my personal brand. How do I start to get in these rooms and start being inspired by other women and what they're doing? And that's a lot of who we'll typically work with. But the second audience that I mentioned, which is like really, again, the beauty of community, I call them the aligned achievers. So those are the women, and they could still be in like their 30s or 50s, but they tend to have more experience, and they have successfully navigated that like transition period of what I call the awakened achiever. So that's like our main demographic. And those are women who are like feeding back into the community. Maybe they lead workshops. Maybe they are doing just like different educational support for the community because I think a big thing that you and I were even talking about before is when I organically started coaching and mentoring younger South Asian women, which I was like, this is new for me. What's happening here? I saw a version of myself in them, which was like really beautiful and motivating to me to like want to just give back to younger versions of myself. And so even with the overachievers, like I started to ask myself more explicitly, who am I the younger version of right now? I'm still navigating things, but so that's where the community element, like I want to be able to look to someone who's older than me or who's more experienced in certain ways and to be able to have this chain of support because as much as we like to say, and I'm so happy to see there's such an array of women's communities, not all women's communities are built the same and you get different personas. So for me, I think that I was like, I want to focus my attention on that like single digit percentage of women that are action oriented, have a bias for action, have, similar values of like, we actually want to grow together and open to feedback, being curious. It's a very specific mindset that I think is indicative of who will eventually continue to be successful on their own terms.
Oh, I love that. That's like broad, but also narrow. So it kind of it helps to let people know if there's maybe this is maybe a space for them. I mean, your
Yeah.
journey in a lot of ways is that journey too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Going from corporate career to deciding to build your own personal brand, doing fractional work, coaching, right? A
Yeah.
little bit about what, obviously getting laid off, that happens to so many people.
Yeah.
Sadly, that is often a catalyst. What was the thing for you that was like, I think I'm going to do this entrepreneurial
Yeah.
life now?
Yeah. No, it's a great question and does tie back to the community because when I was in that in between phase, right? I'm so grateful. Like I had so many colleagues and people being like, it felt like there was this urgency for them to support me to immediately make my next move, right? Like, how could you have a moment to breathe between roles? What's the next thing and how can we help you? And I had operated that way pretty much for most of my career, right? If there was a gap, I felt like I have pressure. I need to like go to the next thing, which again started making me think about questions of how am I managing my money? Like we should be wiser about this. And so I had the financial ability to take a breath and I was like, this is not something I've ever done. I'm going to do that. And I wanted to really get clear on what my next move was going to be because, like I said, I felt like I looked back and I was like, I've accomplished most of what I want to do. Like I had this opportunity at the company. As much as you look at what did work and didn't work, I was grateful for the opportunity to show myself what I was capable of. And now I had to ask myself, where do I want to channel that? So the first thing I knew I wanted to do was take ownership of my personal brand in a way that I hadn't yet done. So before the overachievers was a thing, before I even like had my first fractional client, I was like, I want to tell a story around who I am, what I've done, and like, let's just put that out there, right? And that evolved in many ways because first I thought I was only going to coach early career women because that was the thing. And then I was like, well, I'm going on a learning journey. I still love working with companies. Like, I like making an impact in a tangible way around revenue. And so basically, was leaning into my consulting journey. I got accepted to be a mentor at Techstars, like really just throwing a bunch of things at the wall to explore what was possible. The overachievers started to take off. And as I started doing like the fractional work and the overachievers, I kind of was sensing, well, I'd love to maybe be a part of a high growth company again. Like that was kind of like in my mind. And I think the funny thing about like when you set intentions too is but I was very clear on what did I want this next role to feel like in a way that would be different from what had happened prior. And it was actually a partnership I was pitching to somebody through a mutual friend for the Overachievers. She runs an all women's recruitment firm. And as I was telling her about my background, she was like, I really think, would you ever go back full time? I think there's a role that you would be perfect for. And I was like, I'll take a conversation. You never know, right? And that conversation was with my now former boss, but I took the role at Kit and it was the journey of a lifetime. I got to apply everything that I've done in the ad tech world to the creator economy, learned so much about that. And then when it was time to go, like they needed more technical expertise, I took a step back. And so I say all of this because it kind of ties back to that portfolio career. And I don't think it's one size fits all anymore. It's like who I am and what I bring to the table around my business acumen and how I operate. Like that's true whether I'm working with clients in a freelance capacity or if I choose to go back in house. And I'm always like, I'm open to something that excites me and is innovative, but we have flexibility to choose now. And I think that's a beautiful place to be rather than feeling like you have to fit into any one particular mold. So I'm very much a multi-passionate entrepreneur, I'd say.
Yes, 100%. I mean, and like what you said really does make sense because obviously being on the fractional journey myself, like there are so many cool things happening. The space is
Yeah.
changing rapidly, even in our world of customer success and revenue, go to market. Like there are new roles, there are new exciting tools. And so sometimes even I am like, should I take this job? Really cool full-time career.
Yeah.
I can relate, right? And but the beauty of how you execute is that you're building community, you're building networks, you're growing yourself to build the next thing, right?
It's
So
true. Yeah.
you don't even know what necessarily the next thing is. You mentioned something when we chatted initially about first feeling like a little resistant to being put into like this young brown woman bucket,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
actually have a relational story about this, so I'll tell it after this. But I'd love to hear from you. How have you embraced that title, right? Call it a
Yeah.
title. What challenges are there for other young South Asian women, and how should they think about navigating based on your experience?
Yeah. No, it's so special for me to look at now, but very much a mental journey of something that I was navigating because so what I mentioned to Parole earlier was I had an older female mentor who was trying to tell me to niche down and said, why don't you be like the go-to face big sister for specifically South Asian women? And I was like immediately offended because I mean, the reality is too, I have coached an array of people and I love that, right? I'm like, I want to make an impact regardless. From a business perspective, I do understand the value of niching down. But I was pretty much like, no, out the gate. Now, what is funny and interesting about what has happened is just truly through like fate or whatever you want to call it, I have noticed that young South Asian women have gravitated towards me. And I don't even, it was like when the first one happened, like I just, I'm giving advice. I wasn't even like consciously thinking about who they look like, what they are. And then there was a second one, then there was a third one. And it was beyond just like, my dad, family, friends, daughter. Will you talk to them? Like it starts out like that. But there's a young woman who is still like a mentee and even like a friend of mine who I helped her get a job at Google. But the crazy funny story is she was applying to a role on my team, which did not pan out because of like visa things, right? But I was like, this girl is really sharp. And like, I can't wait to see where she goes, probably because I saw a bit of myself in her. She maintained a relationship with me. And I like think that's amazing. Do that always, right? Like she followed up. She was consistent. She was always asking me how she could add value. And so when the time came and I was able to like coach her and help her get some of these roles, that became like a natural thing that was happening. And so what I've realized is there are a lot of commonalities. One, I'm like a safe, probably like person for them. But culturally, there are things that I'm able to give them insight on from my learnings, right? Because I was always kind of told to kind of like tone it down, or, there's something called like the gender double bind where like you're either perceived as like too nice or too aggressive. And I think in South Asian culture, like we're very much like encouraged to I don't know, education's very like inherent to the culture and like speaking up respectfully about what you think and how you feel is something that we're taught. And so I've been really able to help these women do that delicate dance based on my own experience. And so I think there's so much value and I take so much pride in being able to play that role for so many women today. And it's kind of just happened naturally. And so I think when that's the case, like I've still mentored a wider array of people, like I said, but I think it's one of those paths of self-reflection where you do kind of have to look at like, where is this resistance coming from? And shifting to like, wow, like I'm so grateful that I get to play this because we were talking like we didn't have anybody I didn't know what a go-to-market role was. Like, so much of, like, my career was actually shaped by really strong male leaders that saw potential in me and helped shape that, and I'm grateful for that, but I didn't have any women to really look up to help shape the career journey that I ended up going down.
It's changed now because now you are that, right? And I think that there are so many women that are pursuing that today, but I love that story because you didn't necessarily seek out to be something, or maybe even it felt a little uncomfortable. I think many of us that are South Asian, we feel sometimes like, I don't know exactly how I would put this, because it's not about not wanting to support the community. I think we all want to be and want to support the community, but you sometimes sort of feel like it's too easy, right? It's like a cop out
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
only help, you
Yeah.
know, young brown women.
Yeah.
You're right when you say the connection is there, right? The ability to find common ground and find a safe space that for the mentee is also very, very important. The community that I run, we ran our first mentorship program, and it was kind of the same thing, right? It's like you just meet people sometimes and you're able to connect on common culture, common values, common kind of ways of being, and it helps you take that next step, which you do need to do to have a fruitful mentorship relationship and actually build, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there is a lot of, like, nuance, I think, obviously, within the culture still. Like, I remember there was a young girl. It's this Google thing is so funny to me because I don't know if you've experienced. I see a lot of young women. There have been multiple mentees that are like, I'm like, what's your goal? Like, we're talking, how can I help you? And they're like, I want to work at Google. Truly, like 9 out of 10 times, I'll challenge them and be like, why Google? Like, let's get to the root of this, right? Because yes, Google's an amazing company, but you can achieve a lot of the things you're looking to do. And what I was usually trying to get to the root of is like, I think it's changed now, but like before, when someone would say, I want to work at Google, what they were really chasing was like the prestige, right? Like, if I have this role at Google, I will be seen as this type of person. And that's really what they were chasing. And so, but there was this one girl I spoke to, she was actually really clear on like why Google. So I connected her to the other mentee that I helped get the role at Google. And she just never followed up with her. And like that is something that drives me insane. And I use this example because I think there are so many people that need to hear this, but we all have so much going on in our world. I say, like, be annoying, be persistent until someone tells you to stop. And that's like my like sales leadership hat going on too, because most people aren't thinking about you. Like, it's not that they're explicitly like ignoring you, but you have to follow up and be persistent. And I'm a little bit like harsh that way, where I'm like, that's on you to have that learning. Like, I made that connection once. Like, that is an opportunity you should be like so excited about. Like, follow up, follow up, follow up, because that's how you separate like who really wants something from those that are like, like it's a nice to have.
You're not going to progress unless you're able to really remind somebody sometimes, like the text or the one email they got on that one day is likely buried quickly.
Yeah.
Interesting, like you're having those experiences on people wanting jobs at Google. Mine is a little bit different of late. I'm having experiences of career women who are actually maybe two things. One is like burnt out. That is pretty common. The other one, which is I find interesting, is people working at larger companies who are like, I'm getting a little bored. Should I
Yeah.
do a
Yeah.
startup? And
Yes.
you talk to me because I have a lot of like very early stage startup experience. And for me, I'm often like, consider what that looks like, right? Is it going to
Yes.
align with your life and your values? Because like working in early stage can be pretty taxing from a schedule standpoint that like if you've come from a large company, you might not know. So it's kind of a flip side story that I'm kind of also experiencing.
Well, you know what's interesting about that? And I think the through line is the same, where the goal is to really have the person making a choice sit with like, why? Like, the why is core to everything. And I mentioned this because I haven't actually spoken with her in person yet, but I had a woman reach out to me and she's done some really cool work in like the VC space, but she's at this crossroads and she's asking herself, do I go to a larger company like a Meta? Or do I go and get early stage startup experience? And with the goal being that she's entrepreneurial and she wrote to me that like, the goal is I want to be a successful entrepreneur. And I like sit there and just like smile to myself, because the reality is like, if your end goal is to be an entrepreneur, like you can accomplish that in whichever way. I'm like, this girl could start a business tomorrow. And it's like that bias for action that you just need to have. I think as women, we often tell ourselves we need more experience and more experience. And that's like not necessarily true. I'm like, there are people who can and will go somewhere larger, like a FANG company, and become a successful entrepreneur. Or you could be at an early stage startup and do it all the same. So I think, like you said, there's deeper questions to pick at there. But it's interesting that like we still have this fear of, are we going to get something wrong? Are we going to take a misstep? And I just don't think that's true. It's like
Yeah.
clarity comes through action at the end of the day.
100%. Well, okay, this is a great place to kind of ask you a last question here. How do you balance, right? Whatever that word means, balance. But how do you balance career, community, like passion, and, you know, maybe what sort of is the revenue driver for your life too, right? So,
Yeah.
and then what do you see ebbs and flows? I'm kind of curious, like, does it
Yeah.
change throughout the year,
100%.
right? Yeah.
The way that I have come to understand my relationship to balance, one, balance is not something that ever truly exists. However, I think the best thing anyone could do for themselves to have a better relationship to the balanced life you want to live is to be so in tune with yourself. I feel so much more aligned with my gut and my body now than I have ever been before. And I really believe in like somatic practices and just checking in. I used to be the type of woman that would always say, I don't know, like, I don't know what to do next. I don't know this. And now it's one of my biggest pet peeves because you always know if you give yourself the brain space and quiet to check in with yourself. So I am a very day by day person, and there are still things I'm working on. Like I'm like, don't RSVP to all these events if you can't show up, especially as an event host myself. I'm like, I got to work on this too. But I will check in with my gut, and like now I'm in wedding planning season. We just got a new puppy, like thank you. And so like to me, I know for sure it is important for me to balance my life with the work and the things that are going to pay the bills, but I'm very open to letting it unfold and evolve in a way that is not creating resistance within me. I think that's where we start to deplete our own energy, is because we're pushing, pushing, pushing. And it's like, hey, if you just took a step back, like that was so many of my learnings based on like what I should and shouldn't have done in the tech world. I'm like, every decision I make, does it feel expansive within my body, or does it feel constrictive? And if it's constrictive, maybe I'll unpack a little bit more about why. Maybe it's not a no, it's like not right now. Um, so I think just like the more work you can do to understand yourself is going to be the best way to get to a place of balance.
That's so wonderful. It's like
Thank
that's
you.
a great lesson that anyone can apply. I mean, I think that comes with, a little bit of time sometimes and a little bit of work, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have to make that time for yourself. But that's a great piece of advice. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been
Yeah.
wonderful to have you. We'll drop all the links to the community and to find Ash, but thank you so much. And I have to say, it's wonderful to see women building, for other women, right? I think these are the spaces that we want to create. And if you are, somebody that's looking for it, hopefully maybe Overachievers could be a great community for you. So we hope people will come and check it out. Thanks again. Welcome back to South Asian Success next time. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to South Asian Success. If this episode resonated with you, we hope that you'll share it with a friend or someone else who could resonate with it as well. And if you love what we're doing and building, please do rate us on whatever podcast method you stream on. Any reviews will help us grow and improve this platform. And if you are interested in joining us or talking more about your journey, please be sure to reach out. Take care.